I must be psychic, or maybe it was just a very poorly kept secret, but as I was recording my post-fight video for Eric Molina versus Anthony Joshua, I said during the video, very possibly we will see Eddie Hearn announce Wladimir Klitschko straight after the fight. And that has happened. So I was just about to go to bed. Obviously, I've been watching it back on replay, and I thought, oh, better do another video now that Anthony Joshua versus Wladimir Klitschko has been announced. The fight will take place April the 29th at Wembley. They brought Klitschko and Bernd Bonte into the ring. Klitschko did, I'm afraid, I'm going to describe it as a particularly cringeworthy moment on the microphone, where he was saying, who wants to see a fight? Who wants to see AJ versus WK? Who wants to see two Olympic champions? And then the crowd were sort of half cheering, and he was going, I can't hear you. It was pretty embarrassing stuff from Wladimir Klitschko, I must admit. He should go back to being the intimidating robot as opposed to the comedy character. But Joshua versus Klitschko announced for April the 29th. Big fight. Wembley Stadium. You know, it's going to be a huge night in British boxing. Now, as I said in my previous video, I am sceptical as to whether this fight happens. And obviously the fact that it's been announced means I am now slightly less sceptical, because the fact that it's been announced is a major step along the way. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those fights that doesn't happen. There's so much inactivity from Klitschko, so much age, so much injury from Klitschko. There's so much risk at stake from Anthony Joshua. I am not convinced that this fight goes ahead. Having said that, the fact that it has been announced, the fact that Wembley Stadium has been booked, etc., means that very potentially my initial instinct that the fight wouldn't happen is wrong. And certainly it appears more happening than not based on the announcements just made. So has to admit that I looked incorrect at this particular point, and let's hope the fight does go ahead, because it's a very good fight. David Haye was brutal on the commentary tonight. You know, he said he was coming to end Matchroom, and he's been brutal all night. He has reacted unimpressed to this fight on the Sky commentary. He said Wladimir Klitschko is very old, he's been very inactive, he lost the ability to pull the trigger against Tyson Fury, his lack of punch output will be a huge problem. So David Haye doesn't like the fight, but then again, David Haye probably wants himself in the fight. So it's interesting. I assume the fan reaction to this will be very positive. But as I said, I always found this a weird fight, because I'm not 100% sure the risk-reward truly adds up for Anthony Joshua. I mean, it's true, he's getting a huge payday, I'm sure, out of it. It'll do well on pay-per-view. It will sell out Wembley Stadium, I imagine. But you've just got to wonder, beating Wladimir Klitschko now means substantially less than beating Wladimir Klitschko when Tyson Fury did. When Tyson Fury did, Wladimir was unified champion. He'd been champion for a decade. He had all the belts, or the majority of the belts. He had that fearsome reputation. He'd just come off decent wins against decent competitors. Now he's been inactive. He's in his 40s. He doesn't bring any belts to the table. He's proved beatable by Tyson Fury. I just kind of feel that this win presents less reward to Anthony Joshua. But I think the risk Klitschko presents is absolutely huge. Klitschko, one of the biggest punchers in heavyweight history as far as I'm concerned. An all-time great heavyweight as far as I'm concerned. Someone who had mastered his style, a great technician with great power, one of the best jabs you'll ever see in heavyweight boxing, Wladimir Klitschko. I think he presents real problems for Anthony Joshua in this fight. And personally, I make Wladimir Klitschko a favourite to win. Now, Wladimir Klitschko is in his 40s. He has had injuries. He has been inactive. They say the only undefeated fighter in boxing is Father Time. And we have to acknowledge, at some stage, Father Time will catch up with Wladimir Klitschko. And it may be that Father Time, by the time they step in the ring on April the 29th, will have caught up with Wladimir Klitschko. You know, by then, he'll have been inactive for about 18 months. Could Wladimir Klitschko simply be too old to defeat a young lion like Anthony Joshua? It's very possible. Having said that, Wladimir Klitschko presents some risks to Anthony Joshua that he hasn't experienced before in a professional ring, in a professional fight. The Klitschko jab will be by miles the best jab Anthony Joshua's been in against in a pro ring. You could see from the face-off, Wladimir Klitschko had a height advantage in there. I would presume he has a reach advantage, although I don't know that. The power, they say power is the last thing to go. There's all sorts of rumours about Anthony Joshua in sparring. Rumours he was dropped recently by Lawrence Okoli. Rumours he was knocked out by David Price. We saw him buzzed in the Dillian Whyte fight. We saw him dropped in the amateurs. We saw him stopped in the amateurs. That punch resistance hasn't truly been tested in the pros, let's be honest. There's been one notable punch in Anthony Joshua's entire career that landed in him, and that's that punch that Dillian Whyte landed. Now, at the time, Dillian Whyte was perceived to be a monstrous puncher. Since then, Dave Allen's taken him the distance. Derek Chisora's taken him the distance. Ian Lewison's all but taken him the distance. We have to now acknowledge that perhaps Dillian Whyte isn't actually the biggest puncher in the world. Derek Chisora lived up to his punches. Dave Allen lived up to his punches. Ian Lewison lived up to his punches. So the fact that Anthony Joshua took that shot and was so buzzed by it, perhaps that is a bit of a concern in hindsight. It's inconclusive at this point, I would say. But that is the punch that has landed against Anthony Joshua in his career to date. Wladimir Klitschko is a guy who has mastered his style. He's a guy who throws everything off the jab. He's got that big lead left hook as a weapon. He's got the double jab as a weapon. He's got that straight right cross as a weapon. He's a guy who brings various tools to the table. And if he lands on Anthony Joshua, which I suspect he will, I would be confident in saying it'll be the hardest Anthony Joshua's ever been hit in a professional ring. And how Anthony Joshua lives up to that is anyone's guess. Based on all of the sparring rumours and based on how he's lived up to it in the past, according to rumours, according to the amateur footage, according to the Dillian Whyte fight, I'm not convinced that Joshua will live with the power of Wladimir Klitschko. I'm really not. For me, Joshua has never been the most natural, instinctive, defensive fighter. When the bullets are flying, Joshua is not cool and composed under fire. If you look back at some of the old amateur footage of Joshua, and I appreciate it's years ago and he's improved massively, but what you'll notice is there's a tendency to stiffen up. He's not one of these lucid fighters who's bobbing and weaving and rolling and giving upper body movement and head movement. He stiffens up a bit when he's under fire. And I don't think he instinctively knows what to do when he's under fire. I don't think he adjusted well in the Dillian Whyte fight, and that gives me cause for concern that lack of defensive awareness when under pressure may still be there. Well, I think if Wladimir Klitschko puts him in that position, it's going to be tough for Anthony Joshua, because Wladimir Klitschko does have game-changing one-punch knockout power. Wladimir Klitschko knows how to close a fight, and Wladimir Klitschko has more experience and more pedigree than the vast majority of other competitors in the heavyweight division. So it's a very, very good fight. I certainly hope it happens. I do see it as a competitive fight, I really do. Klitschko 3 or 4 years ago, I'd make a substantial favourite over Anthony Joshua. But an inactive Klitschko who's suffered injuries, who's had a loss at the hands of Tyson Fury, it makes me think it's competitive. I still make Klitschko a favourite, but I'd probably see it more as 60-40 in Klitschko's favour at this point. Now, I do appreciate that my viewpoint here won't align with public perception. I do appreciate that Anthony Joshua will be a substantial favourite here at Wembley Stadium on a home show. But I genuinely believe that Wladimir Klitschko was still the second best heavyweight in the world at the time of the Tyson Fury fight. And I believe that Tyson Fury's uniquely awkward, tricky style caused Klitschko all sorts of problems that he simply wasn't able to deal with. Now, Anthony Joshua is a very, very, very good fighter, but he doesn't present that same awkwardness. He's not as hard to judge range against. He's not as hard to find in the ring. He's not presenting such an awkward, angular target as Tyson Fury. Joshua's an athlete. Joshua can move. Joshua may have more powerful, aggressive offence than Tyson Fury. He's not doing the sort of shoulder up, leaning back against the ropes, riding punches stuff that Fury's doing. he's not got a size advantage over Wladimir Klitschko like Fury had. You know, he's not got that. I don't think Wladimir will find it as hard to get his work off and to generate some punch output as he did against Tyson Fury. I suspect we will see a more aggressively minded Wladimir who can work off his jab and use his textbook punches a lot more than he did against Tyson Fury on that night. I don't say that Joshua is necessarily a worse fighter, but I don't think stylistically he presents the awkwardness that Wladimir struggled with that night. It's a really, really interesting fight. Let me know your thoughts on it, guys. Firstly, will the fight happen? My gut instinct is still giving me concerns over will the fight actually happen. So give me your gut instinct. Will the fight actually happen? Who will win the fight? How will they win the fight? What percentage chance do you rate this? I'm going 60% Vlad, 40% Joshua. Very, very much looking forward to this. Leave your comments in the section below. If you've enjoyed the video, take the time to hit the thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, please press subscribe so you can check out all of the build-up we'll be doing for this fight and others. Hope you've enjoyed the boxing tonight, guys. Cheers.